everybody. It's good to be back. I will tell you, Sam called me back in maybe February, March, and said, I'd really love you to come back. I'd love you to sort of do this again. It's 10 years since you came. You were my keynote speaker 10 years ago, and you made these bold predictions, and it'd be fun to look at those and have you make those in the future. And I couldn't believe it had been 10 years. And then it sort of hit me that maybe I hadn't used those years wisely, that 10 years ago I was the opening keynote and it's 2 o'clock, and that's my slot today. So I'm here. So I'm going to look back at what I said, and that was my dog, just so you know. That was my pit bull, Daniel. So 10 years ago, I talked about what I thought the future would be. And I just want to frame for you where I was at, right? I had really sort of made a name for myself, having started New York Comic-Con and video game shows. I had just left Reed Exhibitions after a healthy, successful career and was starting my own company. So I wanted to say some bold things. And I used a case study, right? So you just use Kodak, which is a great one. I used Blockbuster Video, and I went into great detail. I won't do that now. But my challenge for the group was that Blockbuster had lost its way from realizing it was the best home entertainment brand and thought of it as a company that had real estate. It thought of itself as a company that had late fees, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars of late fees. And that was key to their business, and they wouldn't evolve, right? So one of the predictions, and I'm gonna give you honest, the good ones and the bad ones, I challenged the group to say, I think we have a lot of late fees. I think we have things that we've been doing this way because we've been doing it this way for a long time. And my challenge was, if we don't change, Netflix could come and eat our lunch. So was I right? Halfway. We still have too many late fees, right? We haven't changed as many things as I would like to have seen us change. But you know what? Maybe I was young and brash, as the write-up says. There was no Netflix. We're healthy today, right? This is a good business. We have embraced the fact that we are the leading entertainment brand, and we're doing it in a different way, but still challenge those late fees. So half right. The other piece, the next prediction I made 10 years ago was around, again, I used Comic-Con as my beacon, and I urged everyone to not dismiss it as, oh, that's for fans. People dress up at that. And what I was trying to say, and I think this is the one I was the most right on, is that your best customer is really your audience, and that if you delight them, if you start thinking about their experience, joy, fun, learning, all that comes with that, you will win. And those kinds of events, those kinds of experiences are what people want. I really think I was right on that one. I think that's still relevant to this day, and I'm going to bring it up again when I go to the new predictions. So next up, totally wrong. I was fairly obsessed with the consumer thing. I did make a living for about 10 years adding the word con to everything I did, and everyone thought it was smart. Most of them were terrible ideas, but I still use it occasionally. So the next prediction was basically saying, I think distribution's breaking down. I think consumers will be at our events. Right? I was working on a deal with the Toy Association. Anyone here from the Toy Association? No? So I was working on a deal to open the toy show to the public. We did it. It worked for a couple of years, and then it didn't work. I had done the same thing in the book industry in my time at Reed. We let readers into the book show. And the book show was gone, actually. So it didn't work. I was wrong, right? I really thought that would happen. Now, I will say this. I think brands have a consumer strategy that's stronger today than they did 10 years ago, but it never meant opening the door. So wrong. So last one was really about the exhibitor experience, right? It was what I was suggesting was that exhibitors would start embracing more experience, that they would want to engage more differently, connect more differently. And again, through my lens of how a movie studio might activate at a Comic-Con. And I think we've seen lots of evidence that says that that's probably true. So give me a grade, whatever you want. We could have thrown it in the thing. I'm going to go like B-, I think, somewhere in there. But it's 10 years ago. I'm back, so it wasn't so bad that I wasn't invited back. All I will say this, if you're all excited, if you like this, Sam did say we'll definitely do this 10 years from now. However, I won't be speaking at 2 o'clock on Wednesday. I'm actually speaking on Thursday. So, not sure what that says. So, what are we going to do? We're going to look at another set of predictions, right? And the nice thing is I don't have to really lay the case out because Sam, Ken, even Bob made some strong cases about just evidence of what's happening in our industry, what our customers think. So I'm not going to regurgitate that, but I'm going to try to go a step further and say, yeah, and what does that mean, right? And what might happen with that? So again, we're healthier than Blockbuster, but we got to watch. We still have to watch those disruptive late fees. So here's just a couple of rules. This doesn't really work and isn't very entertaining if I don't say some things that are relatively bold, right? The last thing I want to do is offend anyone or pick on anyone or anything else. So I'm not going to use any specific companies, names, cities, or anything like that. But again, it doesn't work if you're not challenging the status quo. And I know it's easy to be like, well, that doesn't work in my situation. My industry is different. We're in the clean wastewater space, and this jackass is talking about comic conventions, right? Like, just bear with us, right? Like, I'm going with this in terms of, and I apologize to the clean wastewater people, wherever you're sitting. So it really doesn't make sense, right? If you think about it as it must work in every situation. So, number one, and notice I really have almost no words on here, so I'm just going to share my thoughts. A consumer-like experience, I think, is really, really relevant, even more so today. So I'm kind of repeating this one from 10 years ago. Your customers, I don't care what the show, what the business, what the location, they expect to be delighted. They want more than they've ever wanted. They want connections, we heard that. They want cool experiences. They want networking. They want stuff on the sand at the end of the day, right? They want Tom Brady. They want all of these cool things, right? And that desire, right? We have a speaker paying out of their own pocket to go to 3 events at high cost because she wants to go, right? We've got to get there. That pressure is there. So some thoughts for you all. You know, if you think about the last 10 years, shows like Health, Shop Talk, Emerge, Complex Con, the Fanatics Con that's coming, those things didn't exist. Money 2020. They did not exist 10 years ago. And you don't think they disrupted the shit out of somebody? They absolutely did, right? So what's the prediction? If you don't embrace this stuff, if you don't actually realize this is what your customers want, you will see more shows either go away or radically reduce in size, right? And think about where this competition is coming from. It's coming from someone who spoke this morning who's not an event person. They were solving a much bigger problem than, well, how do I start a great, successful, profitable show in Miami? They were solving a cultural problem. That's your competition. Your competition's AWS, running something that has a marketing line, right? They're there to just delight people. They're not thinking about profit. So that sounded a little dour. It is a bit of a warning, but if you do it right, a lot of opportunity in it. Okay, number 2, and this is a bit of a tough one. This hasn't gotten covered that much, but I really don't think there'd be a lot of disagreement on this. I think costs are getting out of control. All right, I just heard some groans. That's good. In general, costs are getting out of control. Now, you might argue, in fairness, so there's venues in here, there's partners in here, that our expectations on margin are out of control. Maybe, right? But this combo is not a good combo. And couple this with what I just said in the first one. Do more cool stuff, or your customers are going to go somewhere else. Better food, big celebrities, cooler stages, connections, all of that stuff. Do more stuff, and that stuff is more expensive, right? And harder to execute, right? And the minimums are higher. I'd even throw in there exclusives. Exclusives are brutal, right? Exclusives in my opinion, do not do anyone any favors. It eliminates competition, and it ends up with high prices and often poor product. So what's gonna happen here, right? And I will say as well, while we run many, many shows in Tier 1 cities, and Tier 1 cities are a big part of the hook of certain things, there are places, again, I don't want to get specific, but there are places like Miami that are emerging that wouldn't have gotten consideration in the past necessarily around, am I going to bring my big convention there? But when you see something like Emerge run with 22,000 people, you think, oh, they can do that, right? So I've got two predictions on this one, right? So one is I do think you are going to see some very significant Tier 1 shows in chatter around these hallways and at CISO and other events I go to. I know the chatter is there. I think you'll see big Tier 1 shows decide my customers will go anywhere with me. That my brand is big enough that my 26,000, 9,000, 72,000, whatever the number is, unverified, Gary. So that they will eventually realize I can't both control cost and at the same time deliver the experience I want in this environment. I got to try something else, right? So I think you'll see that happen. And I don't mean that as a negative to any cities or anything else. I think it's just a reality. You go a little step further, I think you'll see really bold people potentially say, maybe I don't want to be in a traditional building. Can I pull this off in an outdoor venue? Can I pull this off somewhere completely different, right? I think that's coming, okay? Number two, much more positive, right? So number two is, I'm gonna just speak to vendor relationships. I think the relationships are changing, and I think they're changing for the better. And so my prediction is, I think you're gonna see a sort of a new era of partnership between whether it's our core decorators, our marketing agencies, our AV companies, where together we're crafting an experience and we're deciding what can we spend, what do we not need to spend money on. I see so many smarter conversations happening now around the Clarion boardrooms with our partners around, why do you spend money on that? If you'd stop spending on that, I could do this for you. That didn't used to happen, right? So I think this is a real positive thing. Had to give you a good one. Okay, connections. So you've heard a lot about connections. I wrote this one down. I can't remember whose presentation it was in, but 68% of our attendees want to set up meetings. I'd love to see what that number was a few years ago. I guarantee it would be lower. And what I'm telling you is that number is going to be in the 90s. Connections are a given, right? Like to date, it's been we have a hosted buyer business. Yes, we do. Oh, we do some matchmaking at this big show. Oh, we don't do it at that show. I don't think it's going to be optional. I think people are going to expect it. We've got to get better at it. I think we have to stop thinking through the lens of how do I monetize this, right? I'm not saying give it away, but the second we start thinking about how do I get an exhibitor to give me money for this, we're not really solving the core of the problem, which is what is this valuable attendee here looking for, right? What do they want out of this event? So I think this is a given. It's coming. Get with it. So the prediction is I think this is going to get solved at scale in a big way, but it ain't anyone who's here. I think it's coming from somewhere else. So we either need to really get our head around the fact that this needs to be solved, but my prediction is that it won't be us. I think we're too close to the action. We're too close to thinking about how to get another $2,000 out of an exhibitor, right? As opposed to thinking about how do we solve a real value issue for 20,000 people, right? So I think this is coming from somewhere else. I'm not saying that in a scary way. I think this is massive opportunity. I think if this is unlocked at scale, I think it depressurizes a lot of the other expectations that exist within our business. Okay, So what am I doing with this slide? So, yeah. All right, well, I don't normally get political, but we are here in DC. And before I jump into this slide, I did want to just share, Kimberly gave me last night a Perot sticker. And we spent a couple of hours trying to convince people that Perot 24 was a strong proposition. Kimberly, I did a little research last night, and unfortunately he died in 2019. So, although I still might go for it. Anyway, deep fake content, that's what this is about, okay? So half of you are like, yeah, totally, Anderson's full of shit. And the other half is saying, right, you get the gist. So I don't care what your politics are. The world, Bob said it well, the world has become a very mistrusting place. There is an awful lot of misinformation. There's an awful lot of opinion that isn't healthy, right? And I believe this has created an enormous trust opportunity for us, enormous, in a positive way. Our shows are becoming a source of trustworthy clarity, right? What you learn at an event is something that you can take back to your teams. Embracing the idea of education. Many of you have, so don't take this as oh, what is he talking about? We all have education. Yeah, we all have some education, but what I'm suggesting is that you're going to see more and more businesses, more shows that get deeper into education, that become a truly trustworthy source of knowledge. That is going to strengthen your position, right? That is giving a really strong reason. A part two to that one is e-learning. It's big. Liz, you know, we're doing in one of our markets, we've invested very heavily in e-learning. And without boring you about the details, it's a show that has a lot of learning as part of it, but we've taken it, and we haven't hurt the show at all, we've taken it online. We ultimately think the e-learning business may be bigger than the trade show business, right? In this sector. That is opportunity, right? So this is going to get bigger, guys, if you embrace it. And if you don't embrace it, you got to watch who does, right? But I just want to draw a parallel there with Blockbuster. Late fees were great for them, and they made a lot of money at it, and it was annoying as shit for any of you who actually went to Blockbuster, right? But rather than just dismiss that there was another way to do business, they should have charged late fees for as long as they could have, and then they should have been Netflix, right? They should have been Netflix, and they were offered, Netflix tried to sell to them twice in a fire sale type scenario, and they missed it. So what I'm saying is, hey, some of the stuff we do that doesn't totally do it as long as you could do it. But embrace that next wave of innovation, right? And in this case, it's learning. Okay, last one. So this really relates to the fan in your equation. So strange set of pictures there, a rooster, Bruce Springsteen, and U2. So for those who know me know what a giant Bruce Springsteen fan I am, right? So I went to see his concert last summer at the Meadowlands. I think the tickets were a couple $100, no big deal. But what would and it was a pretty standard concert, right? I got relatively close, it was good. He's never played the Sphere. That's an image from the Sphere. What would I pay at the Sphere? Thousands, right? What did I pay to see him front row on Broadway? Mike, thanks for not getting me tickets. A fortune, right? And it was worth every penny, right? And what I'm trying to share here is the audience, I think, has been a forgotten part of our equation, but also a forgotten part of the revenue mix, right? So I'm going to get there on a prediction with you. So again, remember, I've spent a lot of time in the con business and all that, where the fan really is where your money comes from, but we've missed it in B2B, right? The more you're able to, so what is everybody saying they want? They want meetings, they want networking, they want epic parties, They want cool, right? They want all of these things. They will pay for it, right? They will pay for it. We were talking last night about what a VIP pays versus a regular and everything else. You'd be shocked what level of person wants to get closer to Bruce, right? And will pay a lot for it. What's our version of that? Unlock that. So, right, so these all tie together, right? They might sound like, oh, there's 5 random things, right? I talked a lot about cost pressure. I talked a lot about experience pressure, but they do all balance out, right? If you find new ways to drive revenue from learning, revenue from your audience, then there's less pressure on that margin. You may be able to stay where you want to stay, right? And not take that risk. So what's the prediction here? So I think in 10 years, a successful, I'm going to just forget B2C, a successful B2B show should be making 40 to 60% of its money from fans, consumers, attendees, whatever you choose to call them. And I know that doesn't work for everybody, but it definitely, I think it will work for many and most, but only, right? So why the chicken and the egg, right? Or the rooster and the egg, now that I realize I don't think that's the right analogy, but so here's the challenge. You can't just start charging $2,000 for a pipe and drape experience, right? So which is it? Build the experience and then charge? Look at all the shows or some of the shows I just mentioned that you're all familiar with that have emerged in the last 10 years and have gotten really big, really successful, and they have disrupted greatly. They were built that way, right? We have the InsurTech business that we acquired from Jay Weintraub back in 2019. He built it that way. It was always going to include a very high touch, shock and awe experience. It was always going to have great food, incredible content. It was never going to be a pipe and drape show. And it was always going to be expensive to attend, right? And I will tell you that the numbers on that show match that prediction, right? That we are not reliant purely on the sponsorship side of sales. So there's my 5. I would love to, we got time, I would love to open up to questions. If anybody has them, anybody wants to challenge me, that's fine as well.
I'll start. Please help me understand, you're talking about this connection problem will be solved to scale by somebody outside our industry. Are you talking about some kind of a big brother, all-encompassing data cloud? I mean, what are you talking about?
So I think of it this way. Like if we were to think about creating some kind of a LinkedIn or Facebook type solution for a given industry, how good would we be at actually developing a sophisticated version of that? Probably not that good, right? But those two things exist at massive scale today. So I think it will get solved, and I think it's something we can utilize, right? And we'll still have, I don't think we'll be disrupted. We'll have the value. We have the data, we have the brand, we have the dates, right? We have all of the industry at our disposal, but I don't think the tech and the AI piece of it and the ability, the predictive ability to say, right? Right now, I think there's also a trust gap that there's this, I want these meetings, but I don't really want you telling me who to meet with, right? As opposed to an elegant solution emerging that actually helps me get to what I'm looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Greg. You talked a lot about audience, but traditionally we have not been that good on the B2B side in really engaging our audience to know what they want. People could argue with me on that point, but what are your tips to do that, since most of the things you're talking about are generated by what you think the audience wants?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as talk to them all the time, right? So it's talk to them, it's survey them, it's look at the work Ken does that gives you deep insights into what people are expecting and thinking. So any combination of secondary research like that, but nothing's better than actually engaging with your customers. whether that's one-on-one focus groups. And I think it's first and foremost prioritize it, right? Like there's just this draw, like, we constantly get pulled back into thinking about exhibitors first, which, don't get me wrong, they're incredibly valuable. You want them to be happy. But when you have all of the right people in the room and those people are happy, they'll be happy too, right? So it's prioritize, I think is a significant piece. And my background in, having worked in the consumer space for a long time, I think has forever changed the way I think about that, right? I don't like having one unhappy fan that buys a ticket to something that they came to have fun at, right? I think we still need to be thinking about professional audience the same way.
Hi, so back to Sam's question about disruption. How do we get our teams to start looking at disruption as a real thing as opposed to competition? So why is this group doing what we do that's not their thing, when in fact maybe they are actually just disrupting the system and testing it for us a little bit, but we're so angry about the competition that we ignore the disruptive behavior. And so then we're behind the curve. So how do you get your team to start to think differently about embracing disruption and not seeing it as just competition?
Yeah, that's a big question. So you said my team, so I'll speak to what we've done. I would say, at Clarion and at Left Field, the company I'd started before that, we were always, and it's very clear in our kind of cultural manifesto that we shouldn't be afraid to try things, and we use the phrase "fail forward faster" all the time, right? So it's just cultural that we don't look at trying new things as potential risk. We look at them as, something we want you, and it's actually a way to show off your skills as opposed to anything that's scary. I think the biggest hindrance in general in our industry is, look, we all know the business model. It's a great business model. It's very easy to get a little lazy and back into the, charging a bit more for the booths adds up much quicker than figuring out how to unlock, 15,000 meetings for people, right? So I think we fall a little too in love with, and look, in 2020 and 2021, we all had to deal with the fact that, that stuff wasn't at our disposal. So we got pretty creative pretty quickly about how we might, try and do other things. I think it's just stay away from the fear, right? It's fine, do your late fees, right? But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking at streaming. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking at mail order delivery, which was Netflix's original business model, right? So don't fall so in love with the way you do business today that you're unwilling to try new ways as you go forward.
Greg, hi. We've seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions recently. Do you think that trend will continue over the next 10 years or so? Do you think it'll be a rise in that?
Yeah, for sure. I would actually say M&A is back at a level I've not seen. There's more participants, more buyers today than I've ever seen, between traditional big companies, PE-backed companies, newer PE-backed companies. I think the appetite to get deals done has never been higher. So for sure, yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Greg. A question for you would be, of these 5 trends, which do you think will have the biggest impact on our industry as a whole, and why?
Well, say that again?
Of the 5 trends that you were just describing to us, which do you think will have the biggest impact to our industry overall? Yeah.
I think financially, I'll answer it, I guess, a couple different ways. Like financially, if you're just thinking about this as I'm running a business, I'm trying to grow, how do I grow? I think the potential of unlocking audience value, audience spend, I think has the biggest chance to move the needle. And all of you could just sit there, no one has to share it. But, how many of you are sitting there thinking, like, I'm nowhere near 40% on audience revenue? What would that look like? What would it take to get there? So I think that's the biggest one, in my opinion. I think cost stuff can be controlled. I think you can make smart decisions. And I would say from a cultural point of view, I think embracing the idea of being a source of trusted learning, not just, oh, we have some conference too, I think could kind of culturally change our product mix more.
Yeah, Greg, you talked a little bit about Toy Fair and about Book Fair. What did you learn from that, from your perspective today? And is it something that still won't work, or you think you just didn't approach it?
Well, I definitely learned that a lot of shit I do doesn't work. So, and I still get invited back to stuff, so I don't know how that happened. But what did I learn? I think frustratingly, I learned industries are very slow to wanna and to have a willingness to innovate. I still think both were really good ideas and would have been in the best interest of the industries themselves. But the companies, the sponsors, frankly, just couldn't figure out, like they literally would trip themselves up over like, this is amazing, there's 20,000 kids playing with our toys. Do we sell something to them? Sure. I don't know how to do that. We sell to them. We sell to a guy with a truck who delivers it to Toys R Us. Like so we're gonna pass, right? As opposed to realizing that is the most authentic, pure thing you've just created is an interaction with an 8-year-old with your new toy. So.
Yep, so I have a question, number 5. I totally agree. I mean, we were talking about that in my organization even before the pandemic, like the experience, the customer service that some of our customers want. Like we can charge more to give them that. But my board is resistant in that like we're creating this class system and we're gonna alienate the non-VIPs. How do you counter that?
Yeah, okay, I mean, that's real. So there's a few different ways. I guess I'd say one is, you want to make sure you're getting proper value from everyone, right? So this isn't about, oh, well, you're all free, but these people pay a fortune, right? I think if it's really valuable, it's really good, it's $7,500. Like, I mean, that's an extreme example, but it's clearly really good that she wants to go, right? So if it's good, it's not about class. It's about just make sure you're getting the value for what it is. If you think part of your mix is a VIP experience, I think there's a few different ways to go about that. Some of it can be service levels, access to things. Is it just lounges? Do they get in earlier? Is there a special stage? Is there something that is only available to these people? Do they get backstage to meet who they want to meet? So I think I would look at it not just as a class system thing. I think it's really the first step is what you're building valuable enough to say this has a price tag and we do not give it away.
Thank you.
Greg, you've been an amazing innovator forever, and I'm trying to tap into your secret sauce or methodology. I mean, you say moving forward it's important to deliver the cool stuff, but what is cool is in the eye of the beholder. Is there some kind of, there are events like ECEF or the National Restaurant Association of Food where it's tactile, you can really make things pop more easily, but for accountants, or I know there's some other shows in here that are like meeting, the coin operator show or that sort of thing, something that might be a meat and potato kind of event. What's cool? What are you going to deliver that's not like just a cookie cutter from another?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and I recognize there are industries and markets and cities and everything that lend themselves to, cool better than others. But I think my challenge to anyone would be your customers are consumers, right? They they root for a sports team, right? They like a musician. They also want a cool cocktail experience at the end of the day, right? Like, I'm just going to give you an example that's cute and just something we've done at shows that, our energy shows, which are, I wouldn't say they're, right? I mean, they don't lend themselves to being, radically cool, but like we do a puppy lounge, right? We do a puppy lounge. We take an area that's, I don't know, 1,000 square feet. We work with a local ASPCA, and people literally come in. It's sponsored. It's always sponsored. A sponsor is like, nope, I want to scan who's coming in. I want that to be my engagement point. And who doesn't like puppies, right? Accountants love puppies. So that's a good example of like, you know, I know not everyone has the budget to have, you know, Tom Brady, but like, nor do any of us New Yorkers give a shit about Tom Brady. But either way, I mean, Eli Manning would be awesome, right? So, like, I would just look at that and say, you know, whatever your background, you'd find that engaging as well. But what did we just talk about over here? Learn about them as people, right? Like, do you know what they're about, or do you just know their job title and their email? Right? That's where those ideas should and could come from.
Something that I learned many, many years ago is funeral parlor operators, owners, when they leave their hometowns, they go nuts, which kind of makes sense because they can't do it while they're home. We have a question, Chime Live, and then we have a question back there.
There's a con in there somewhere, for sure.
All right, so the question from Chime Live says, assume your show can't move. Could you elaborate on how to limit cost escalations or what to do about them?
Assuming you can't move.
Right.
So you're like the name of the city is in your...
I assume so.
Yeah, okay. I think part of that, I'm gonna go to the partner piece of this, is, you know, many cities can be phenomenal partners. And I think engaging them in a early discussion about what you're trying to create, the challenges you're up against, that you've got to create, your customers are demanding a certain experience, so that minimum is becoming a problem, or that hotel rate's becoming a problem. I've generally found pretty receptive if you come informed and not late demanding stuff and saying, I just don't want to pay for that and everything else. So I think part of it's negotiate, right? I think part of it is your partnership with, you know, where you spend your money, is engage, you know, whether you're Freeman or GES or Expo Group or Shepherd or Fern, whatever, is get them involved early in the challenge, right? Our costs are running so hot, but I have to deliver this, right? I think that's the best way I would say it. And by the way, I wasn't suggesting that shows would move as a angry retaliation. I think it's a natural progression. Is there will be some big thinkers who, and I know some of them, that are already thinking about why can I really create the experience I want inside of a traditional building, right?
Well, actually, that's why a lot of companies outboard our events, and that's why a lot of companies create their own corporate events.
Right.
Because they want that total control to create their own event. Yes, please.
Hey, Greg. So I work at Hive. I think Hive is a real-world example of everything that you're talking about. We have a show called Shop Talk that runs in Las Vegas every March. It is $3,500 to $5,000 price point per attendee, and they pay it happily to come. There's over 50,000 meetings that happen at the show across 4 football fields. They're all one-to-one meetings in a double opt-in situation, so everybody's happy, and PF scores are across the board awesome on both sides. And there's, you know, celebrity keynotes, there's big parties, we feed them lunch and breakfast every single day. There's a lot that happens to get to that price point, but I just am throwing it out there that it works, you know, but it certainly takes a big leap of faith to get there.
And I think, thank you, and I think the challenge there, and then we have a question over there. I think the challenge there is, it's probably a lot easier to create that type of event from the ground floor. To take a trade show, a conference, a convention that has 10, 50, 100 years of history,
yeah.
that's really
a challenge. Just an observation about that, it actually always staggers me how little starting of shows the industry does, right? You just asked about M&A. Everyone's always excited to assault that gentleman when he, you know, whoever has the cool new show, right? But like, then start it, right? You're right. It is harder if you've had 50 years of legacy of it's free registration for buyers, and now you're saying, but I include lunch, and I include meetings, and there's a killer party, and Eli Manning is there, and all of that, right? And then now you're like, and now it's $1,800. That's hard. If you start it the way Shop Talk did, they clearly proved the market was there.
Shop Talk it was a great show, by the way. Greg, I'm from Chicago. We'll take Tom Brady. Here's my question. Over the last 10 years, if you do a Google search and you put trade shows events in and you see the trend lines relative to the rest of the marketing mix, we've been flat. And so my question is, are we kind of is the perception of us as being an old industry? And I listen to the word choices you use, which are more current, trendy, fans. You're using words that the younger generation relate to more than perhaps the B2B side. So I just raised this, I guess I'm just asking, are we hurting ourselves by not advancing some more this terminology that could relate to our audience in a better way?
Maybe, but I still think, I think Bob made the point very eloquently that we are a people business. We are about connecting people, and it works, right? Like, I'm old enough that I've seen several challenges come along that's like, yep, this is the killer, that's it, trade shows, COVID's gonna get us. Nope. The internet revolution, you can just search online. Why would you ever go to a trade show? Nope. Big recessions, everything else. It's a very resilient business, right? So where 10 years ago I might have been kind of trying to scare everybody and, so Netflix is, they're lurking around the corner. I don't think that exists for us. I think what we do is so pure and good. My caution to the room is that if any individuals, if we get sleepy at how close we are to markets, how much we innovate our shows, we don't call them the right things, that there will be a Shop Talk around the corner that will say, good luck with all your pipe and drape, we're doing it this way, right? And that has happened, and I'm telling you, there'll be more of it. But this stuff is how to avoid it. I don't think it's an industry problem, though. I think you got to think about it in your own space.
One last question. Last question, yes.
Perfect. I was waiting to ask the last question because it's I agree with all your 5 points, Greg, and great and very inspiring. There's one thing missing that's always number one in Europe: decarbonization, sustainability, climate regulations. Where does it come into play? Threat or opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't put that in because I felt like that is worthy of its own topic, right? Like, that is a big enough thing. But I think to me personally, I think about it as a little more of a threat than I do an opportunity. I think if we, meaning if the pressure gets significant, that throws a lot of onus on us to change things radically about how we do business. If we get ahead of it and we do those radical things, it may end up solving a problem that never comes, but I don't necessarily see it as something that radically advances us. So I think of it as a bit more, that's my opinion, but I didn't put it in here because I think you could do a half a day on that. But
thank you very much. You're incredible. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.